Hello and welcome to What's New in Aerospace. My name is Marty Kelsey. I work here at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. I host a TV show for middle school students. Today we're in the Moving Beyond Earth Gallery and we have a great program for you. We have NASA astronaut Shane Kimbrough, a veteran of 189 days in space, and he also completed 6 spacewalks. He was also an Army aviator. Please welcome to the stage, Shane Kimbrough.
Thanks, Marty. Hey, great to be with everybody today. Before we get going too far, I want to present you and the National Air and Space Museum this montage from the Expedition 50 crew. So hopefully you guys can find a spot for this. And thanks for everything you're doing for NASA.
Awesome. That is great. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning. It's great to be with you today. I want to share a little bit about our mission I just returned from a few months ago. My crew and I were up in space almost 6 months. It ended up being about 173 days for this mission. So we left in October, got home in April, so almost the whole school year for you kids out there. So it was quite a long time. It was a great mission, great to be a part of. What people don't usually realize is that we're part of 2 mission numbers. So I was fortunate enough to be on Expedition 49, which is this patch here. And so when we launched and we went to space, there were people on the space station already. A crew of 3 were there: Kate Rubins, Takuya Onishi, and Anatoly Ivanishin from Russia. So those 3 were there to greet us when we got there. We overlapped only for about a week, which is pretty unusual, but it just with the timing, the way it worked out, they had to teach us everything they knew in about a week. So it was really fast-paced learning for us. And then they came back home. As soon as they left the space station, it became Expedition 50, which is this patch here. So the rest of my mission was Expedition 50. Obviously, the majority of it was 50 for me. So that's kind of what I kind of lean on is Expedition 50 when I do things, because 95% of my mission was called that number. So very honored to be part of that. I was lucky enough to be the commander of Expedition 50. So from about late October until April, I was the commander of the International Space Station and had that honor. I do want to share with you some highlights, kind of a highlight video of our mission. So just imagine we're taking about 6 months, cramming it into about 15 minutes, but I'll share with you, and hopefully you guys can learn a few things. And let me know afterwards if you have any questions. So here's our crew. That's my Expedition 49 crew, the 3 of us on the left, myself and the 2 Russian cosmonauts, Sergei and Andrei. We launched together in the Russian Soyuz spacecraft to get to the International Space Station. This is my Expedition 50 crew. The 3 on the right there are the new crew members that joined us, Peggy, Toma, and Oleg. I don't know if you all know, but we currently only launch from Kazakhstan on a Russian spacecraft called the Soyuz. So you're seeing pictures here on launch day of us in Baikonur, Kazakhstan. Here we are climbing into the rocket about 3 hours before liftoff. We climb in there. It's really, really tight. So if you put those 3 chairs that you're next to really tight together and put your knees up in your chest for 3 or 4 hours, that's how we got to experience our launch. All right, so when the launch time happens like this, we are ready to go because it's pretty uncomfortable otherwise. It's a really great, smooth ride uphill. The rocket in general, to me, is much smaller than what I'd experienced on the space shuttle, so, but very smooth. You'll see some video that says we're going uphill there. We pull about 3 Gs, which means you weigh about 3 times what you weigh normally going uphill. But after about 9.5 minutes, after we lift it off, we're in space. So then you're floating around. It's a pretty cool experience what your body goes through in those 9 plus minutes. We got to the space station. It took us a couple days to get there because we were in one of their new spacecraft, and they the Russians wanted to do a lot of testing on their spacecraft. So in those 2 days before we got to the space station, we did a lot of testing on that vehicle. Everything worked great. And here you see Sergei getting us docked to the space station, or connected. We call it docking. And then after a few hours, we get to open up the hatch or the door to the space station, and those 3 crew members I told you about were waiting for us and welcomed us obviously graciously. So it's great to be flying again. We were in this very small compartment for a couple days, and then to get to the space station, which is very big, was really nice. Then you can fly around. Before each crew leaves, we do a change of command ceremony, so that's what you're seeing here, where Anatoly, the Russian, was handing over command of the space station to myself. And then shortly after that, we kind of stuffed them in their Soyuz spacecraft and sent them away to come back home. And they were up there about 4.5 months total. Shortly after that, we welcomed the next crew that arrived. And that's Peggy Whitson there, who just landed a few weeks ago. You may have seen that in the news. She set all the U.S. records for time in space, and so it was really an honor to fly with her and learn all I could from her. This is the Japanese resupply vehicle that they launch about once a year. We call it kind of the golden treasure box for obvious reasons, but it's really massive. I mean, it's this giant vehicle that shows up. This happened to be in early December, so it actually had our Christmas presents on board, so we were pretty excited about getting this vehicle, and I got the chance to go grab it and attach it to the station. And then we had a lot of equipment, of course, that we were using for science and research, as well as some of our spacewalking equipment was on that vehicle. This is SpaceX, who's out of California, a private company out of California that they also launch a cargo vehicle. And Thomas, the gentleman here on the lower part of your screen, was grabbing this vehicle for us, did an amazing job. And again, we attached that, and it had lots of science and research materials for us, as well as some equipment that we needed. One of the cool experiments I got to work on, you're seeing here, is what we call veggie, but I got the chance to actually grow lettuce, as you see there, in space. That was kind of neat. It kind of felt like Matt Damon in The Martian a little bit, growing my own stuff. But it's a cool capability just to have fresh vegetables in space, of course, but it's not something that we had to have now, but we will have to have that when we go to Mars or go somewhere deep space. So it's neat to know that we can do that. You're seeing some other cool experiments that we got to take part of. We had almost 300 investigations or experiments that we call that our crew was a part of. So very cool. That's Robonaut there. We took some funny pictures with that. Another cool thing about these unmanned vehicles that come up is they bring us fresh food, like fruit that you see there. Peggy ordered this, I don't know what color that is, kind of neon green Jell-O that we all experienced around Christmas time with our crew there. So you can tell with the stockings hung that it's about Christmas time. And our Russian crewmates weren't too sure about what we were eating here, but we were like, trust us, it's going to be okay. But we got to enjoy meals together, usually on the weekends, like you're seeing here. And eating's very challenging because you got to have everything kind of tacked down or Velcroed down. Tama got really into these oranges and apples and making it kind of a game. These are what we call chocolate-coated candies. You might know them as another name here on Earth, but we can't endorse anything, so that's what we call those. But we had a lot of fun with those, and of course they all float around and make for good visuals. This is how water or any liquid behaves up in space. You see Tama there. I'm getting a drink bag there, so a lot of you kids will know what Capri Suns are. These are kind of like monster Capri Sun bags. That's the way I think of it. You just fill it up with water. It'll have something in the bottom of it, like powder of Kool-Aid or grape drink or iced tea or whatever you like. So that's actually how we run in space. It's actually horizontal to the floor, so there's no up or down in space, so it's just kind of weird initially to get your brain around that, but then it becomes normal. Working out and exercising is very important for us, as you probably know, to maintain our bone density and bone mass, as well as our strength and muscles. This is the workout machine that we have. It's phenomenal. The load, you can get up to about 600-pound loads doing squats or bench press, or I can't, but the machine can. But it really keeps your strength up, and this is a stationary bike that we use as well. We work out about 2.5 hours every day, and by doing that, it maintains our strength and our bone density and bone mass. So, and really a cool thing is just looking out the window, right? So we get to see crazy views. Those little white things are thunderstorms that we're watching from above on a night pass here over the Earth. So we do a lot of experiments, of course, that we mentioned earlier. Some are on our own bodies. We're looking at eyes a lot now, so that was part of our deal. We had the good fortune of being up in space for Super Bowl 51, which was hosted in Houston, which is where we are all from. So Houston and NASA had a big part in the Super Bowl festivities. So the NFL actually launched every jersey for every team, as you're seeing here. Being from Atlanta, it was pretty cool that Atlanta actually ended up being in the Super Bowl for me, so I got to wear that jersey, but they, of course, didn't end up winning it. But Peggy was wearing the Patriot jersey here in the end game, and that's the only jersey, ironically, that was like double XL, so when you see her in it, it's like she's like wearing shoulder pads, and all the other jerseys were medium, I think. So anyway, it was kind of fun to be part of it. So we did a bunch of videos, and we're playing football in space, that's right. So So we're going to play catch here in a minute. These passes, somebody said, set the world record for the longest pass in history, because in the 3 or 4 seconds that it takes to throw, we've gone like 20-something miles. So I guess technically they are correct, but I'm not sure we'll claim that. A really cool thing about being up there, which I'm not a photographer at all, but you kind of get addicted to taking pictures of our planet. And I had some really, you take a lot of pictures, a lot of them aren't so great, but every now and then you get some keepers, and some of these are from my social media sites. The Bahamas are just spectacular. This is Australia. Just all around the world is amazingly beautiful in different ways. So whether it's a desert or the Bahamas or something like this river delta in Madagascar, Dubai, Palm Islands, just really, really cool pictures that a different way that we get to experience our planet. And we have different cameras, different lenses. Sunrises and sunsets are always amazing. We see 16 of them every day. We're going around the Earth every 90 minutes, so think about every 45 minutes we're seeing a sunrise or a sunset if you happen to be looking out the window, which we don't all the time. Here's a tropical storm. Of course, we've had a few of those hit our country here recently, hurricanes and things, so they look really amazing and beautiful from space, but we know the devastation that it's causing on Earth is pretty dramatic, so they're very humbling to see. Here's some more pictures that I got to take. Hawaiian island chains, pretty nice. The Red Sea, so we're going over different places all the time around the Earth, so to me it was just neat to kind of see different places, and got to experience a supermoon when we were up there, so that was pretty special. Looks like before one of our Christmas meals. And so traditions across cultures are very different. So the way the Russians would celebrate Christmas is different than the way we do. So it was neat to share all these traditions, whether we were sharing ours with them or they were sharing it with us. So one thing we got to do was do a cookie decorating contest, which has never happened before on the space station. So we were the first group to do that and share that with our Russian colleagues, and they actually won the contest. They blew us away. I got a chance to do 4 spacewalks on this mission, which is pretty special. And Thomas, the French astronaut that was outside with me on this one, was the first person ever to take a GoPro camera outside. So he had a GoPro kind of attached to his spacesuit, and some of these really amazing views of Earth you're seeing are coming from that camera there. We had a great time outside on 4 spacewalks. The main thing we were doing on the first 2 were replacing the batteries on the outside of the space station with new batteries. So these things are really big. They're like the size of maybe your dryer or your washing machine. They don't weigh anything in space, but they're normally about 1,000 pounds. So it's kind of nice to be able to move something around. You think you're pretty strong, I guess, but you're really not. But upgrading the capacity and the capability of the space station's batteries was the mission on the first 2, and luckily enough, everything really behaved very well. Sometimes things outside don't behave like you plan them to behave. They're outside in some really extreme temperatures. When the sun's out, like you see here, it's about 200 degrees. And when it's at nighttime, which every 45 minutes that happens, it's about minus 200. All right, so everything out there is going through these extreme temperature swings every 45 minutes, and sometimes that causes bolts and things to stick. So in our case, we were pretty lucky that everything behaved pretty well while we were out there. That thing you saw floating there was what we call a tether. That's our safety tether. So as soon as you come outside, you hook that thing up. That way, if you happen to let go and make a mistake or something, you're not going to go floating off into space. You'll actually just come back to where that's connected. So we're very disciplined about that. It's obviously a very important part of what we do when we're outside is staying safe. This module here you're seeing is called the cupola. It's just an amazing module where it's all windows. It looks directly at Earth all the time. So if you ever get any free time, we usually go hang out in here and take pictures, or just watch the Earth go by and have a moment there to see our beautiful planet. And why not? Why would you not want to go look at something like that all the time, right? Coming into a sunrise. These things are called auroras. Most of you are probably familiar with those, but if not, they happen not all the time. We were lucky during our mission; it happened quite a bit. So we got some beautiful pictures of the green gases just dancing, is what it looked like. But really spectacular views. Now, the only vehicle that we have, those cargo vehicles I mentioned earlier, there's only one that actually comes back to Earth, and that's the SpaceX vehicle called Dragon. And so we're showing you here, we're packing this Dragon up. So we put things that really have to get back to Earth, whether that's experiments or pieces of equipment or things like that. if it doesn't have to get back to Earth and it's just trash, which we have a lot of trash on board too, we fill all those other vehicles like the Japanese and the Cygnus vehicle, we fill all those up with trash, and they actually burn up in the atmosphere and don't make it back to Earth. So that's how we manage our trash, is one way we do that. So this is April 10th. I'm handing over command of the space station to Peggy Whitson there, and shortly after that, my 2 Russian crewmates and I get in our Soyuz, close the hatch, get in our spacesuits, and start heading home. So from the time we undock there to the time we land is about 3.5 hours. So again, we're kind of crammed in there, and here we are coming through the atmosphere. So things are getting pretty dynamic at this point. It's about 3,000 degrees there that we're coming through. So we obviously want to make sure our heat shield is facing in the correct direction. And so the Russian controllers are making sure that's all good to go. So we survived. We came into a beautiful day in Kazakhstan, but you got to watch this landing because it's not soft. How about that? But watch after we land too. We actually we roll a few times, and so that was pretty sporty. I mean, we hit really hard. You can see us tumbling there because our parachute was full, and then we kind of got drug a little bit. You can kind of see the marks in the desert there. But after all that, we were all safe and weren't feeling the greatest because you never really do when you come back to gravity for a few days. But we got out. I got to call home right away to talk to my wife, so that was great. And then shortly after this, we hop in a medical tent and do a bunch of medical testing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that short kind of summary of our mission and gives you a flavor kind of for what we got to experience.
Let's have a seat and talk a little bit. How do you prepare for something like that landing?
It was a surprise to me completely, so obviously we didn't prepare very well. I heard stories from my colleagues, of course. You talk to them, what's it really like, and people equate it to like a really bad car crash, and that's probably accurate, I guess is the way. We weren't completely ready for it because our instrumentation and everything in our vehicle and the people outside that were talking to us told us we were at 100 meters when we hit. So we weren't completely ready, but we hit anyway, of course, and the rest is history.
And then your first experience back in gravity and you're rolling.
Yeah, so that was pretty special.
Wow. All right, well, I want to remind everybody we're on Facebook Live, so submit questions. And if you're here in the gallery, come up to the microphone and ask questions. We do have a Facebook Live question. If you had to choose a NASA must-follow mission that's coming up in the next few years, what would it be and why?
Wow, they're all so unique, so it's hard for me, of course I would probably pick one of my buddies, right, because I'm more connected with them, but they're all so unique and they're all doing amazing things. Science and research is always different, and a lot of times we don't know what we're going to do until we get there because the experiments may not arrive when they're supposed to, and we don't get trained on everything, so that's a hard question to answer. Of course, the future is trying to get somebody going to Mars. That's a couple decades away, but that's where we're heading. That's going to be obviously a very special mission. Maybe in the near term, to answer that question, is commercial crew. So we have 2 private companies, Boeing and SpaceX, building our next spacecraft to get us to the space station, and those are supposed to happen in the next few years. So those will be big, big deals for us and those companies, so maybe that's the next big thing to look forward to.
Now, you talked about your crew and your buddies and everything. How important is it to be able to rely on each other as a crew?
It's extremely important. We do a lot of training beforehand. Like my Russian crewmates, I didn't really know them until I went over there for training. They threw us out in the middle of the Russian winter in the woods for 3 days and said, survive. And so we got to know each other pretty well over those 3 days, trying to survive in about 6 feet of snow and great conditions like that. That was kind of our introduction to each other, and then from then on, our relationships were built from that. And we do, I would say, similar things in the U.S., but they're a little more, I guess, gentlemanly.
And you learned Russian to be able to communicate with them, correct?
Absolutely. So we have to be at a certain Russian level to be able to be assigned to a mission these days because we're flying with the Russians. That's the only country that has a spacecraft to get us to space. Once you get assigned a mission, your Russian just keeps getting better and better because we go over there for about a month to 6 weeks at a time for training, and you're sitting in class all day and it's all Russian. But it's a different language. It's like the NASA lingo, like the technical Russian, not just, can you order a cup of coffee or something.
Now, you flew helicopters in the Army during Desert Storm. How did that prepare you to become an astronaut?
Well, there's a lot of things I take out of that. A lot of it's kind of living and working in a very austere environment. Not many amenities around, so very similar in that regard. But I also learned a lot about people and just how to manage people and how to be with people and work with people that are different than you. and try to bring everybody's strengths together because everybody's not great at everything, believe it or not, even astronauts. So everybody has strengths, and you try to pull from those as the leader to make your team as good as possible.
Cool. All right, don't forget, here in the gallery, come over to the microphone, you can ask questions. We've got another Facebook Live question. What are the procedures and how do the astronauts feel when a large solar flare has occurred like that happened last week?
Yeah, so we get information from Mission Control who really tracks those things for us. The crew's not monitoring that day by day, but we have people that are monitoring that to keep us safe. So usually it comes through our crew surgeon kind of channels to let us know something's coming up, and then when the event happens, they'll put us in a part of the space station that is most protected.
You mentioned the crew. How important are the people on the ground to the success on the space station?
The people on the ground are the most important. I mean, really. I mean, they're the ones that are the true heroes of the mission, and they're all looking out for us, making sure we're safe first of all, making sure the vehicle's safe second of all, and then making sure we get everything done that we're supposed to get done. So they are a huge, huge piece of the puzzle. Even though usually all you see, unfortunately, is the astronauts. You should be seeing them more than the astronauts.
Well, and I heard that some of them actually hunkered down at Mission Control during the hurricane and stayed there to make sure that everybody on station was safe.
Yeah, so the folks that were there when the hurricane hit were there for 3 or 4 days, and usually they work 8-hour shifts, but in this case they worked 72-hour shifts, and because you couldn't get in or you couldn't get out, that was the problem. I mean, if they could have gotten out, they would have, and more people would have come in, but you couldn't get people in, you couldn't get food in, so they were really hunkered down for a couple days.
Now, we talked earlier, and you actually you taught math at West Point. How important is that math? And the other question that follows that is, what would you tell a kid that's struggling with math?
So math's important in our field for sure, but it's important in many fields of engineering and science. So it's not certainly specific to astronaut world or space, but it's an important quality, I think, for any kid to be able to look at something and be able to have the problem-solving skills to maybe solve whatever problems in front of you in class, but also to solve problems in general. So you're going to have many problems that come in front of you in life, and you can kind of use these techniques that math and engineering bring out to solve most problems. Nice. So it's pretty neat.
All right, we've got an audience question.
Yeah, hi, R.B. Hirsch here. Was wondering, you said about 2 to 3 hours exercising. How much time spending on the third-party experiments and then sleeping as well?
So for our normal day, 2.5 hours is geared towards exercise, like you mentioned, about 4 or 5 hours towards experiments or maintenance, depending on what's going on that day for each crew member, and then 8 hours of sleep a night is what we're scheduled for. Thank you.
We saw the video of you exercising in space. I learned this the other day. That's actually not tied to the wall, is it?
Right, so it's a floating kind of deal, so it's really odd the first few times you get on it and try to figure it out. The stationary bike you saw the video of, somebody said, I was like, what's that like? They're like, it's like riding a unicycle on a trampoline. I was like, good analogy. So when you're up there, you're kind of holding on, you're floating, and you're trying to get your balance, and once you do, then you're kind of good to go, but it takes a little while to get used to it.
Now, you did 2 spacewalks on a space shuttle mission and then 4 on your ISS mission. That first spacewalk you went on, did you feel like you were falling?
A lot of people do, so I was kind of geared in my mind to have that feeling, and I didn't feel that way. So I think that's a blessing, unintentional blessing that you weren't feeling, because that kind of freaks people out, right, when they feel like you're falling to Earth. But again, unfortunately, I didn't have that feeling.
Nice. All right, we've got an audience question.
Hi, it takes a lot to be an astronaut. What do you think are the most important qualities that a person can have to succeed in a mission like the one that we just completed?
Yeah, these long duration missions are way different than the space shuttle mission. I've had the chance to experience both, but it's a different kind of person that you're looking for and that you want to be with for long duration, right? For a couple-week mission like a shuttle mission, you can do anything for a couple weeks, right? Go camping, you can do whatever. It's not, you're not going to get on each other's nerves too badly in a couple weeks in general. But when you're looking for a person to fly for 6 months, and you're trying to pick a crew together, our management has to do that, and then try to put people together that are compatible for one. You would think we're all the same, but we're very different. All the astronauts are extremely different and bring different things to the table. So you're trying to mix the skills along with the personalities. And in my case, I was just super fortunate to have incredible people with me that even being the commander, I didn't have any issues to deal with. So they made it easy on me.
Good question. What was the difference in training for a spacewalk from the space shuttle to the station? Was there a big difference in that training?
I'd say the biggest difference is the amount of training you get. So for a space shuttle mission, you knew exactly what you were going to do about a year before you flew the mission. So we trained 7 to 10 times in the pool for each spacewalk we would do for real. So a lot of training. In the space station world that we're in now, we don't necessarily know what's going to break, right, outside. So they kind of trained us more generically on everything, but nothing really specific because, like in my case, on my 3rd and 4th spacewalks on this mission, we didn't really know what was going on. I'd never seen the task before, but we had enough training and enough, they filled us in a couple days beforehand that we were ready to go and were able to accomplish the mission.
Cool. All right, we've got another Facebook Live question. Henry, age 9, wants to know, how often do you see solar eclipses from space?
That's a good question, Henry. I didn't see any on my mission. So the folks that were up there, a month ago now or so, got to see an incredible one and saw some great, you probably saw the pictures and video from that. But it depends on when it's going to happen on Earth as to if the crew can see it or not. So not very often.
Now, I know you guys like looking out the windows, but what was your favorite thing to look at when you were orbiting?
Wow, that's such a tough question. There's so many beautiful places on our planet. The one that most striking that every time you flew over, you were just like, wow, is it really that beautiful, was the Bahamas. It's just the turquoises and the blues and the way it interacted with the white sand underneath and around it it always jumped out different every time I saw it. But again, there's seeing the reds and the whites in the deserts of Africa were really striking too. So it's just incredible places that we had the pleasure of experiencing.
Did you see any place that now you want to go visit now that you're back?
Yeah, the entire Earth, like all these remote places that you maybe have heard of, or like Dubai, and you got to take pictures of. I'd love to go see places like that. So check off my bucket list maybe.
Now, you were very active on social media while you were up. Why is that so important?
Well, I was not a social media person before my flight, so I was kind of very new at the game. But it is important for me to share the experience. Otherwise, most of you folks aren't going to get the chance to go to space, unfortunately. I wish everybody could, because then you would see how fantastic it is and what a cool place it is to work and live. But one way we can kind of connect with you guys, hopefully in the general public, is to use social media to show what we're doing each day or what we're seeing when we're flying over. And hopefully you've connected with some of the pictures that you've seen from me or somebody else that maybe is your hometown or something, place you've been, and you're like, oh, that's so cool.
All right. Well, we're out of time. I'd like to thank Boeing for sponsoring What's New in Aerospace today. Thank you all for coming in. And Shane, thank you so much for joining us
Marty.
today.
All right.
Thanks for watching.